A small boy's stomach made a sound that was not a hungry sound anymore. It was past hungry. It was the sound a body makes when it has stopped asking. He was 4 years old. His brother was 6. They stood holding hands in the dust by a stagecoach wheel. Their shoes had no soles left. The smaller one swayed on his feet. A woman's hand came down on the older boy's shoulder. Steady. Behind her, the stagecoach driver was already throwing down a small carpet bag tied shut with twine. A tall man stepped out from the shade of the depot. Wide shoulders. Sunburned. A flat brown hat. He took the hat off when he saw her belly. She looked him in the eye. Her voice was quiet and clear. "Mr. Hale," she said, "my little boys haven't eaten for a week." She closed her eyes. She braced for him to send her back. What he said next, no one on that platform would ever forget. "Stay with me." The man with the hat in his hands looked at her. He did not speak right away. He looked at her face first. He took in the deep, tired hollows under her eyes. He took in the cracked lips. He took in the way she was standing, with one hand on the older boy's shoulder and the other resting on the swell of her belly that was not small, that was 7 months on if it was a day. He took in the dress that had been good once and had been mended too many times. Then he looked at the boys. The older one stared back at him. Dark, serious eyes. A boy who had decided some time ago that he was going to do whatever was needed to keep his brother alive, and he was sizing up the stranger to see whether the stranger was a help or a problem. The younger one would not look at him at all. He was hiding the side of his face against his mother's skirt. One small dirty hand wrapped in a fistful of the fabric. The man's jaw worked once. He set the hat back on his head. Slow. Like a man taking the time to think. Then he stepped down off the depot porch. He walked across the platform to where they were standing. He went down on one knee in the dust in front of the older boy. Not crouching. Kneeling. So his eyes were below the boy's eyes. "Son," he said. His voice was rough. "Quiet. What's your name?" The boy did not answer right away. He looked at his mother. She nodded once. "Samuel," the boy said. "And my brother is Jacob." "Samuel and Jacob. All right. My name is Caleb Hale. I am the man who wrote your mama. I want you to listen to me, Samuel, because what I am about to say to you, I will only say one time, and I want you to remember it for the rest of your life." Samuel listened. "You and your brother are not going to be hungry tonight. You are not going to be hungry tomorrow morning. You are not going to be hungry in this country, ever while I am alive. Do you understand me, son?" Samuel's eyes filled. He did not cry. He had stopped crying about a long time ago. But his eyes filled up. He nodded. Caleb Hale stood up. He turned to the smaller one, Jacob, who was still hiding. He did not crouch this time. He just put his hand out, palm up, low, the way you offer your hand to a dog you do not know. "Jacob, I have got a wagon over there with a basket in it. There is bread in the basket. There is cheese. There is an apple for each of you. Would you like to come and see it?" Jacob's small face came halfway around his mother's skirt. "Apple?" he whispered. "Yes, sir. A red one." Jacob looked up at his mother. She knelt down beside him. She kissed the top of his small dirty head. She put her mouth close to his ear. "It is all right, baby. You can go look." Jacob took Caleb Hale's hand. His little hand disappeared inside of the big rough one. Caleb Hale walked the boys over to the wagon. The boys had eyes only for the basket. Caleb lifted the corner of the cloth on top of it. The smell of fresh bread came out into the dusty air. Samuel made a small sound in his throat. Jacob did not make any sound. He just stared. Caleb tore a piece of bread off the loaf. He gave half to Samuel, half to Jacob. "Slow now," he said. "Slow. Or we'll come right back up. Trust me on that." The boys ate slow. Their hands shook. Caleb stood by the wagon and watched them eat, and he did not turn around because he did not want the woman across the platform to see his face. When he turned around, his face was the way it had been. Mostly. She had picked up her carpet bag. She came across the platform to him. He went and met her halfway. He took the bag out of her hand. "Ma'am?" "Yes." "I am sorry." She blinked. "Sorry for what, Mr. Hale?" "My letter said I would have a meal waiting at my place. I should have brought more on the wagon. I did not know. I had no way of knowing." "Mr. Hale? You should not have had to say what you said. Not in front of those boys. Not in front of God." "I am sorry, ma'am." She looked at him a long second. Mr. Hale, she said softly, there is nothing you should be sorry for. There is everything I should thank you for. Don't thank me yet, ma'am. We are about a 2-hour drive from my place. There is plenty more in the wagon. You and the boys will eat as we go. We will get you home. We will get you settled. And then we will have a long conversation, you and me, about what comes next. All right. All right. He held out his arm to her, to help her up onto the wagon seat. She took it. He lifted her up gentle, like a man lifting a piece of glass. The boys climbed in the back. Samuel helped Jacob up first, then climbed up himself. They settled into the bed of the wagon with the basket between them. Caleb climbed up beside her on the seat. He clucked once to the team. The wagon rolled out of the depot yard and turned north onto the long dirt road that ran up into the high country. Behind them, the boys ate their first real meal in 7 days. The pregnant woman beside Caleb Hale put both hands on her belly. She did not speak for the first mile. Then she said, quiet, Mr. Hale. My name is Marion Pritchard. Used to be. I have been signing the letters Marion Hale because that is what the agency said to do. But I have not been Marion Hale yet. Not really. You will be tomorrow, ma'am. If you still want to. The preacher in town will marry us at noon. I still want to. All right then. He clucked to the team again. The wagon rolled north. The sun was setting on their left. The country opened up, long brown grass, scattered cottonwoods along a creek, low blue mountains rising in the distance. Marion Pritchard looked at the country. Behind her, her 2 boys were eating bread. In her belly, a 3rd child was kicking. And beside her, a man she had never seen before yesterday was driving her toward a roof and a fire and a life she had not believed 3 days ago was still possible for her. She did not cry. She had stopped crying about a long time ago too. But she put her hand on Caleb Hale's sleeve. Just for a second. She said, thank you, mister. He did not look at her. He said, thank you for coming, ma'am. And the wagon rolled north into the dusk. The Hale place sat at the end of a long lane up a shallow valley. It was not much. A small clapboard house. A barn that had been white once. A corral. A windmill that ticked in the breeze. A few head of cattle scattered in the lower pasture. Behind it all, the country rose up into pine timber and dark blue ridges. It was not much, but it was a place. Marion Pritchard saw smoke coming from the chimney. She saw a single lamp lit in the window. She saw a swept porch. A man had spent today getting his house ready for her. She put her hand over her mouth. She did not cry. The wagon pulled up in front of the porch. Caleb Hale set the brake. He climbed down. He came around. He lifted Marion down off the seat as careful as he had lifted her up. Then he came around the back of the wagon and lifted the boys out one at a time. Jacob he carried inside on his arm. Samuel walked beside him. Inside the house was warm. There was a stew on the stove. A loaf of new bread on the table. A pot of coffee. A pitcher of milk. 4 plates set out. 4 cups. Caleb Hale had not known how many people were going to step off that stagecoach today. The agency had told him a woman. They had not told him about the boys. They had not told him about the belly. But 4 plates were on the table. Marion saw the 4 plates and she had to put one hand on the back of a chair. Mr. Hale. Yes, ma'am. You did not know there were 4 of us. No, ma'am. I did not. Then. I figured. Most women coming out for a marriage like this, ma'am, they are coming for a reason. The agency said you were a widow. Widows out west often have children. I thought if she comes alone, I have 4 plates. If she comes with 1, I have 4 plates. If she comes with 3. He stopped. He almost smiled. I have 4 plates. Marianne's eyes filled. This time 1 tear got out. She wiped it away fast. Sit, ma'am. Boys, sit. Let's eat. They ate. The boys ate carefully now. They were past the worst of it. Their bellies were small from a week of nothing and Caleb had to keep slowing them down. He cut their meat. He buttered their bread. He poured Jacob's milk and held the cup for him because Jacob's hands were still shaking. Marion watched him do all of this and she did not say a single word. When the meal was done and the boys were sitting wide-eyed and warm with their hands folded in their laps, Caleb stood up. Ma'am, there is a room in the back. It is small. I put new linen on the bed. The boys can share that bed tonight. They will fit. They are little. He looked at her. I will sleep in the barn. Mr. Hale? It is not a hardship. The barn is dry. There are blankets. Mr. Hale. We are getting married tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. At noon. Yes, ma'am. That is 12 hours from now. Yes, ma'am. And you are going to sleep in the barn for 12 hours so that I can sleep in your bed. Yes, ma'am. She looked at him. The candlelight on the table flickered between them. Why? Caleb Hale took a long breath. Because, ma'am, you are a woman who has had a hard road. You and those boys. You stepped off a stagecoach into a country you do not know, to a man you have not met, with a baby in you that is not mine, and you took a chance on me with everything you have got. You are not under my roof yet, ma'am. Not officially. And until the preacher says the words tomorrow, you are a guest in this house. A guest sleeps in the bed. Her host sleeps in the barn. That is how it is going to be. Mary and Pritchard put both hands on the table. She lowered her head. She did not cry. She had practiced not crying for a long time. But her shoulders shook. Caleb Hale picked up his hat off the peg. He took a blanket from the chest by the door. He stopped at the door. Ma'am? Yes. In the morning there is fresh eggs in the basket by the stove. There is bacon in the safe. The boys are welcome to as much milk as they can hold. I will be back from the barn at sunup to take care of the stock. We will eat together. Then I will drive you to town. All right. All right, Mr. Hale. He went out. The door closed soft behind him. Mary and Pritchard sat at the kitchen table of Caleb Hale's small clapboard house, with her two warm-fed sons leaning sleepy against each side of her, and she looked around at the lamp and the stove and the 4 plates on the table, and she put both her hands on her belly, and she said, very quiet, to nobody, "Thank you. Oh, thank you." She was talking to God. She was talking to her dead husband. She was talking to the universe. She was even, a little, talking to the strange quiet man who had just walked out into his own barn so she could have his bed. She got the boys into the back room. She washed their faces with a cloth from the basin. She put them under the quilt. They were asleep before her hand left their hair. Samuel held Jacob's hand in his sleep. He had been doing that, she had noticed, for some months now. He was 6 years old and he had become a father to his little brother because the actual father was in the ground. Marian blew out the lamp. She lay down on the small clean bed in the front room. She put both hands on her belly. The baby moved, slow and strong, against her palm. "We are safe," she whispered to the baby. "Tonight we are safe." She fell asleep before she finished saying it. Outside in the barn, Caleb Hale spread his blanket on a stack of clean hay. He took off his boots. He lay down with his hat over his eyes. He did not sleep right away. He listened to the wind. He listened to the cow shifting in her stall. He listened to the small quiet sounds of his own land. He thought about the boys. He thought about the woman. He thought about the baby coming in 2 months. He thought about his own wife, his Sarah, who had been in the ground 3 years now, and the cradle in the loft above him that had been made for a child who never came, and the loneliness he had carried up and down this place every single day for the last 1,000 days. He thought, the road back from grief is not a road. It is a wagon that pulls up at a depot in the middle of nowhere and a woman steps off it with 2 boys in soulless shoes and says the words that break your heart in half and remind you that you still have one. He almost slept. He was almost there. And that was when the dog began to bark. Not the bark of seeing a deer. The bark of seeing a man. Caleb Hale was on his feet before he understood that he was. He pulled his boots on in the dark. He took the rifle down off the peg by the stall. He levered around into the chamber. He went to the small high window at the back of the barn and he looked out across his yard. There was a rider down at the foot of the lane. Just sitting his horse. Not coming up yet. Watching the house. A second rider came up beside him. Then a third. 3 riders. Caleb Hale did not know any of them. But he knew this. 3 riders sitting at the foot of a man's lane at midnight, looking at his house with the only lamp lit on the porch, were not 3 riders who had come to ask after a lost cow. He moved fast. He went out the side door of the barn. He kept the barn between him and the riders. He came around to the back of the house. He scratched at the back bedroom window. Marian opened the window in her shift. "Mr. Hale?" 3 riders at the foot of the lane. "I do not know them." "Get the boys. Get into the root cellar in the back hallway. The trapdoor. The latch is on the inside. Do not come out until I knock 4 times. Do you understand me?" She did not ask questions. She went. He heard her wake Samuel. He heard her wake Jacob. He heard their small bare feet on the floor. He heard the trapdoor open. He heard it close. He heard the latch. Then he heard the riders come up the lane. They came slow. They knew they were being watched, or they suspected it. They pulled up about 20 feet from the porch. The leader was a thick man on a gray horse. A long mustache. A flat black hat. He sat his horse the way a man sits who has done a lot of his living from one. "Hale," the leader called. His voice was loud in the still night. "Caleb Hale. Come on out, friend. We just want a word." Caleb Hale stood in the dark of the porch with his rifle across his chest. He did not step into the lamplight. "Speak it from there," he said. "You bought a bride out of the agency." "I did." "You picked her up today." "I did." "There has been a mistake." "Has there?" "Yes, sir. The woman you took home is owed by a man back east. 2 boys with her. A baby coming. That woman owes a debt to a man named Crail, and Mr. Crail has paid the agency for first claim on her. Agency made a clerical error. They sent her to you. Mr. Crail has sent us out to collect his property." Caleb Hale did not answer right away. He thought about it. Then he said, his voice very quiet and very steady, "Mister, I do not know who you are, but you are going to ride down off this porch and you are going to ride back the way you came. You are going to tell Mr. Crail that the woman he is looking for is not here. You are going to tell him she is married to a Wyoming rancher and she is under that rancher's roof and his protection. You are going to tell him that if any man rides up this lane again in the next 40 years asking after her, I will treat him the same way a rancher treats a man trying to run off his cattle. Do you understand me?" The leader laughed. It was not a real laugh. "Friend, you do not know who Mr. Crail is. I do not need to. Mr. Crail is a banker out of St. Louis. He has men all over this country. He is owed $3,000 by that woman's dead husband, and he means to collect it out of her one way or the other. You hand her over now, friend, and nobody has to get hurt." Caleb Hale stepped forward into the lamplight. He was a tall man. He had taken off his hat earlier when he had met Mary Ann. He had not put it back on. The lamp from the porch caught the side of his face. The side with the scar across the cheekbone. The side most people did not look at twice. The leader on the gray horse looked at that side of his face. The leader's face changed. "Hale," he said. "Yes." "Caleb Hale." "Yes." You were not the one in Abilene. The one in Abilene was." "That was me, mister." The leader on the gray horse went still. The second man on the second horse leaned over and whispered something to him fast. The third man on the third horse already had his hand on the reins like he was thinking about turning that horse around. Caleb Hale stood on his porch with the rifle across his chest and he watched the 3 riders make a calculation in the dark. "Listen carefully," Caleb said. "I do not do that work anymore. I have not done it for 3 years. I came up here to ranch and I came up here to be done with all of it. But there are 3 of you on horses at midnight on my place asking after my wife, and I am telling you to be off this land by the time I count to 10. After 10 I am going to count differently." The leader did not answer. 1. The leader pulled his reins around. 2. The second horse turned. 3. The third horse turned. By 6 they were galloping down the lane. By 9 they were out of sight. Caleb Hale stood on his porch and listened until he could not hear the hoofbeats anymore. Then he stood there another full minute. Then he walked back through the kitchen to the hallway. He knocked 4 times on the trapdoor. The latch slid. The door came up. Mary and Pritchard came up first. The boys behind her. All 3 of them white as paper. "Mr. Hale. They are gone. They will not be back. Not these 3. Will there be others?" He looked at her. He did not lie to her. "There will be others. Crail will send others. But by the time they come, we are going to be ready." He let her sit down on the bench in the kitchen. He sat down across from her. He folded his big hands on the table. "Mary Ann." "Yes." "I am going to tell you something I have not told anybody in this country." She waited. "And listen, if you are still with me riding through this midnight with Caleb and Mary Ann and 2 scared boys on a kitchen bench in Wyoming, do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button. Because what Caleb Hale is about to tell her is the part of this story I have wanted to tell you since the start. Now stay with me. We are not done. Before I came up here to ranch," Caleb said, "I was a federal deputy marshal. For 8 years. Out of Abilene. I have a reputation in this country in certain rooms, that I have spent 3 years trying to leave behind. The man who just rode off knew me. He knew me by my face. Mary Ann's hand went to her mouth. They will tell Crail, she whispered. They will tell Crail. And Crail will sit at his desk in St. Louis and he will think about whether $3,000 is worth losing more men over. And I am going to make sure before he decides that he knows it is not. How? Caleb Hale almost smiled. By writing him a letter. Caleb Hale wrote the letter that night. He sat at the kitchen table with a single sheet of paper and a pencil and he wrote slow, the way a man writes when every word matters. Mary Ann sat across from him with her hands folded over her belly. The boys were back asleep. The kitchen was quiet except for the scratching of the pencil. When he was done he read it out loud to her. Mr. Crail. My name is Caleb Hale. 8 years I rode for the Federal Marshal's Service out of Abilene. You may ask anyone in your line of work in St. Louis what that means. 3 of your men rode up my lane tonight to collect a woman named Mary Ann Pritchard and her 2 boys on the matter of a $3,000 debt. I am writing to inform you that the woman is my wife as of noon tomorrow. The debt died with her husband, as you well know. Any man who rides up my lane after this letter to ask after her will be considered by me to have come on my property with intent to do harm to my wife and my children. I will respond accordingly. I respectfully suggest that $3,000 is not worth what this will cost you. Sincerely, Caleb Hale, late of the United States Marshal's Service, Albany County, Wyoming Territory. Mary Ann was crying by the end of it. The good kind. Send it, she said. He sent it the next morning, on the eastbound stage out of town, after he and Mary Ann had stood in front of the preacher at noon and become man and wife. The preacher's wife had pinned a small bunch of wild yellow flowers to the front of Mary Ann's good dress. Samuel had stood next to Caleb. Jacob had held on to Caleb's hand the whole way through. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Caleb Hale did not kiss Mary Ann. He had asked the night before what she would prefer. She had asked for a kiss on the forehead instead. So that was what he did. He took off his hat. He bent down. He kissed her on the forehead. She closed her eyes. When she opened them they were wet. But she was smiling. Word came back 6 weeks later. A man in a black suit got off the eastbound stage in town. He asked at the depot for directions to the Hale place. The depot master, who liked Caleb Hale and did not like the look of a man in a black suit asking after him, sent the man up the lane in the wagon driven by the depot master himself. The depot master sat the man at the kitchen table. Caleb came in from the barn. He took off his hat. The man stood up. Mr. Hale. My name is Whitcomb. I am Mr. Crail's attorney. Caleb did not offer his hand. You are not in trouble, Mr. Hale. I am here to deliver a letter. The lawyer set an envelope on the table. Then he picked up his hat. And he left. Caleb opened the envelope at the kitchen table with Mary Ann beside him. The letter inside was short. It was in Crail's own hand. Mr. Hale. The debt is forgiven. The widow Pritchard and her children are released from all claim. You will not hear from me or from anyone in my employ again. It's Crail. That was all. Mary Ann put her face down in her arms on the kitchen table. Caleb Hale put one hand on the back of her neck. Soft. He did not say anything. He did not need to. After a long minute, Mary Ann lifted her head. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist. She looked at the letter on the table. She looked at the man beside her. Caleb. Yes, ma'am. It is over. It is over. He let us go. He let you go. Because of you. Because of God, ma'am. I just held the pen. She put her hand on his hand. She held it there. Caleb Hale, she said. You held more than a pen. That winter the snow came hard. It came in November and it did not really leave until the end of March. The drifts piled up against the kitchen window. The cattle were brought down into the lower pasture and fed every day with hay Caleb had cut in the long meadow back in September. The boys grew. They grew fast. They grew because Caleb did not let one meal go by without putting more food in front of them, and they grew because Mary Ann put weight back on her own thin frame, and they grew because they were no longer afraid. Samuel started calling Caleb Pa on the second week of December. He said it once at the breakfast table, casual, as if he had been saying it for years. Caleb did not make a thing out of it. He just answered him. Jacob took longer. Jacob took until the day the baby came. The baby came in late February. It came in the front bedroom of the Hale house in the middle of the worst blizzard of the winter. The midwife from the nearest town 20 miles east could not get through. The road was gone. The wires were down. It was Caleb Hale who delivered that baby. He had delivered hundreds of calves on this place. He had not delivered a human baby in his life. But Marian told him what to do between contractions in a steady, quiet voice. And he did it. The baby came just before midnight. A girl. Small. Loud. Healthy. Caleb wrapped her in a soft flannel blanket. He laid her on Marianne's chest. He sat down in the chair by the bed. He looked at his wife and at her daughter, the daughter of a dead man he had never met, the third child of a woman who had stepped off a stagecoach and changed his life, and he said quietly, "What do we name her, Marianne?" Marian looked at the small pink face. She looked at Caleb. "You name her Caleb. You brought her." Caleb Hale thought for a long time. Then he said, "Hope. Her name is Hope. Hope. Hope Hale." Marian smiled. She closed her eyes. "Hope Hale," she said softly. "Welcome to the world." The door to the bedroom creaked. Two small heads pushed it open. Two small faces peeked in. Samuel held Jacob's hand. They had been told to stay in the kitchen with the neighbor woman who had ridden through the storm to help, but they had not stayed. "Pa," Samuel whispered. "Is she here?" "She's here, son. Come and see your sister." The boys padded across the cold floor in their nightshirts. They crawled up onto the foot of the big bed. They leaned over and looked at the small bundle on their mother's chest. Jacob, who had not spoken to Caleb Hale unless he absolutely had to in the 6 months since Caleb had picked them up off the depot platform, Jacob said softly, "Hi, sister." Then Jacob looked up at Caleb. "Pa," he said. Just the one word. Caleb Hale's eyes filled. He nodded once. He could not speak. He reached out and he put his big rough hand on top of Jacob's small head, and he kept it there for a long time. Outside the window the blizzard howled. Inside the small front bedroom of the Hale house, a man, a woman, 2 boys, and a baby girl were warm under one roof and one quilt and one promise that had started on a dusty depot platform 6 months before with the words, "My little boys haven't eaten for a week." The promise had not just been kept. The promise had become a family. Spring came late that year. But it came. The snow pulled back off the ranch in stages. The creeks ran high. The wildflowers came up in the long meadow. The mare foaled in April. The cow freshened in May. The ranch came alive. So did Caleb Hale. He fixed the corral fence first. Then the barn doors. Then the painted trim on the kitchen window that Sarah had loved 3 years ago, and that he had let go gray. He hammered and painted and mended for weeks. And every night he came in tired and hungry to a kitchen table that was no longer set for one. Marian cooked. Marian mended. Marian sang to the baby in the next room while she shelled peas at the counter. The boys ran in the yard. The yard, which had been quiet for 3 years, was full now of the sounds of small boots and a small dog barking and a small voice calling out, "Pa, come look, Pa, come look," 20 times a day. Caleb Hale found, to his own quiet astonishment, that the sound of children calling him Pa did not break his heart the way he had been certain it would. It did the opposite. It put his heart back together a little every day in small careful stitches. In June the doctor's wife came out from town to see how Mary Ann and the baby were getting on. She walked into the kitchen and she looked Caleb up and down and she said, "Mr. Hale, I do not know what these 4 have done to you, but you look 10 years younger than you did at Christmas." Caleb grunted. But after she left, he looked at himself in the small shaving mirror by the wash basin. And he saw it too. He saw a man whose shoulders were not up around his ears anymore. He saw a man whose mouth was not clamped in a hard line. He saw, faintly, the man he had been before Sarah died. The man Sarah would have recognized. He stood there a long time. Then he turned and walked out into the kitchen and he said, "Mary Ann." "Yes, Caleb." "Get the boys. Get the baby. Wrap her warm. We are going for a walk." She knew where. She got Hope into the blue knitted blanket. She got her shawl from the peg. She took Caleb's arm at the kitchen door. Samuel and Jacob ran ahead of them across the yard. They walked out past the mended corral, past the painted window, up the long slow slope toward the rise at the edge of the meadow, where the wildflowers were thick that year, where a small wooden cross stood under a single cottonwood tree. Sarah Hale's grave. Caleb had not been to it in 3 years. He had been able to look at it from the lower pasture every day. He had not been able to walk up to it. Until today. They came to the grave together. Caleb took off his hat. He held it in both hands against his chest. Samuel and Jacob stood very quiet beside him. They knew the way children know that this was a serious place. Caleb looked down at the marker for a long moment. Then he started to talk to his first wife. He talked simply. "Sarah," he said. "Honey, I want you to meet some folks." He cleared his throat. "This is Mary Ann. She is the woman I married last fall. She is a good woman. She is patient with me. She is gentle with the stock. She is the best cook this house has had since you, honey, and I am not just saying that." Mary Ann's eyes filled. She did not interrupt. "These two boys are Samuel and Jacob. Samuel is 6. Jacob is 4. They're good boys. They work hard. Samuel is going to be a fine rancher. Jacob is going to be a fine doctor or a fine preacher. One or the other, I have not decided yet which one of those he is going to be." Jacob giggled. Caleb almost smiled. "And this little one? This one is Hope. She came in February. In a storm. She is loud and she is healthy and she is named for what they have given me, honey. Hope. After 3 years of going without it." He stopped. He had to stop. "Honey, I've been carrying you on my back for 3 years. And I want you to know, wherever you are, I am not putting you down. I will never put you down. But I am setting you on the ground now just for a little while so that I can pick up these 4 and carry them too. Because they need carrying. And there is room in my back, Sarah. There is room. There is more room than I knew." He looked down at the wildflowers. "And someday a long ways off, I will come up here and lay down beside you and we will talk about all of this. And I will tell you about every year I get to have with them. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every haying season. Every dumb thing the boys do. Every smart thing Marion says. I will tell you all of it, honey. So you save me a place. All right? You save me a place." He stopped. He could not go on. Marion put her hand on his back. She did not say anything. She just stood there beside him. The boys stood very still. Hope made a small soft sigh in her sleep and turned her face into her mother's shoulder. A meadowlark called somewhere out in the long grass. After a long time, Caleb put his hat back on. He took a long breath. He looked at his second wife. He looked at his 3 children. He looked down at the small wooden cross. "All right then," he said quietly. "Let's go home." They turned. The 5 of them. They walked back down the slope together. Through the wildflowers. Past the mended fence. Toward the house, where the smoke was rising from the kitchen chimney, and the dog was barking at the porch, and the second chair at the kitchen table no longer sat empty, and the cradle by the stove rocked slow with a small foot inside it. Samuel ran ahead with the dog. Jacob held Caleb's hand. Marion held Hope. And Caleb Hale, who had stood on a dusty depot platform 6 months ago and watched a pregnant stranger step down off a stagecoach and tell him in front of God and the depot master and the whole quiet world that her little boys had not eaten for a week, walked back toward his own house on his own land with the family he had built out of those words, and he thought, Lord, look at what you grew from one bowl of stew and 4 plates at a table." He smiled. Just a little. Just at the corner of his mouth. The way a man smiles when, after a long winter, he finally sees the first wildflowers come up in the meadow.